Welcome to Immigration Invasion, a podcast where we explore the ridiculous and absurd aspects of immigration law in the U.S. We are your host, Asma Din.
Robert Armstrong.
And we are super excited to have Paul Hunker back in the studio with us today. Paul, thank you so much for joining us again today.
Frequent guest, right?
Yes.
This is podcast number 4.
Absolutely.
But, statistically speaking, he's been here, almost 50% of the podcast.
Yes.
We appreciate that.
Yes, we do. We appreciate that.
It's absolutely my pleasure, and there's so much absurd things to talk about.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, before we get started, I want to send a shout out. So this episode, you guys will probably notice the, lighting, video, everything else is a little sharper, a little crisper. I'm actually all the way in the scene. Well, it's and thanks to Phenomenon Studio, who's doing this recording for us. So that, and then I'd like to send a shout out to our fake sponsor, which is the limited edition due process for non-citizens. Enjoy it while it's gone, before it's gone.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. So this episode, this is episode 4 for us. This is called Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. So for fans of the film, you guys probably remember all the chaos that was going on in that movie and how the characters had to kind of juggle and handle all these different things that were happening in the multiverse.
With hot dog fingers.
With hot dog fingers. And so I think that's kind of the feeling that a lot of us immigration practitioners have been feeling the last several months. And so, so we have Paul here today to kind of run us through some of these executive orders, what they mean, what has happened. So, yeah.
So, and Paul, we definitely appreciate you taking on the monumental task of reading, absorbing into your psyche all of these, executive orders, policy changes. We're going to try to distill them and make this. I was going to say make this make sense, but that's not possible. It's not possible. But I want you guys to kind of get a sense of the big picture. Right, like in context, what do all of these things put together? And I think there's going to be kind of a pattern once you make it through this. So, so this episode I think will be a little different. We're not really going to do our normal segments per se, other than a quick broken news. We'll jump into the breakdown, a little fun game. I'm going to try to do a little challenge for myself. I'm going to try. And then our hitter kit. So we'll do our best to not make this like numbingly boring. We just want it to be numbing. Yeah. So should we jump into broken news?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's jump into broken news.
So I read this story and it made me think this actually should be the official mascot for runaway immigration policies. Okay. So there was a report that a CBP blimp, which is, devices that they use those to monitor the border, right, Paul?
Yes.
And I guess they're tied to the ground. Is that, are you familiar with them?
I'm not sure.
Okay. So I'm assuming they must be tied to the ground most of the time. But this little buddy broke free from South Padre Island, which is 9 hours away from us here, and made it all the way to Dallas, Texas.
Wow.
So, it also, I guess, got kind of fed up with what's going on the last 2 months. I don't know. But I'm like, that's the perfect mascot, for all these policies. Doge, if you guys are listening, make that happen.
Yeah.
Instead of needlessly firing, thousands and thousands of career bureaucrats. But
it's actually a good example of expedited removal. So
Yeah.
what's happening on the border is now coming to Dallas.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. So, so that was a little bit of broken news. I think before we jump in, okay, Paul, I'm going to challenge myself to do something. It's not going to go well, and I just know there's no way I'm going to be able to do it. So I'm going to set a timer, and I want to go through all of the policy actions that Trump has taken since taking office, Trump 2.0, and try to read them all within a minute, right? In previous administrations, within the first 2 months, that's pretty doable, right? I mean, 20, 30. According to the Trump Policy Tracker 2.0, which is on mpolicytracking.org, right? It's a website where you can see a list of all the policies, 165 policy actions to date.
Wow.
That is, everything everywhere all at once,
Yeah.
right? It's like drinking fire from a fire hose. So, pull out I'm going to set my little timer here. I don't know why I'm doing this like I'm 70, but yeah. All right, so I'm going to set a timer. It's 1 minute.
Okay.
Let's see how many of them. I'm just going to read the titles too.
Okay.
Let's see.
I believe in you. I feel like you can do this.
I think maybe I could too. Probably I can't, but maybe I can. All right, timer. 1 minute. And okay, here we go. All right, USCIS proposes to collect social media identifiers on certain forms to enhance screening and vetting of applicants. State Department announces visa restrictions for foreign officials and other facilitating illegal migration. USCIS proposes to collect new information on certain forms to enhance screening and vetting of applicants. EO 14224, designating English as the official language of the United States, reported DHS asked IRS for information about undocumented immigrants. USCIS releases policy memo on issuance of NTAs in cases involving inadmissible and removable citizens. Non-citizens. ICE signs contracts with private prisons to expand immigration detention capacity. DOS expands visa restriction policy for individually linked to Cuban labor export program. DHS announces that it will enforce laws that penalize undocumented immigrants. DHS secretary reduces duration of recent extension and redesignation of TPS for Haiti. USCIS changes form I-914 application for T non-immigrant status to no longer allow X gender marker. Reported ICE releases the unaccompanied alien child. Okay. Let's see how many. That's like 100 and... I read like 100 and... No, 1, 2, 3... Okay, so like 10. Okay, so I got through 10. Okay, so not very impressive. And why per se would you guys are like, why in the world is he doing that? Why not? Right? Like the absurdity in the amount of them that are put out. Even with the titles, right? You have to ask, what is the actual intent? Right? Because there doesn't seem to be a cohesive policy that they're going for. It's just, we want to do as many things as we can get away with. And then, even if we can't get away with it, let's do it anyways.
Yeah.
So,
it's a lot of let's put it all out there, do whatever, we want to do. We'll worry about whether or not this is legal later. And so that's been kind of the feeling.
Yeah.
And the administration can get away with a lot initially. I think that the complete elimination of Title VIII rights on the border will be struck down, will be enjoined. But in the meantime, he's removed a lot of people from the country to Panama, to Guantanamo, for example.
It's like the tortoise and the hare, right? Like, they take off, they're able to get way far ahead, and it takes a while for the safety systems we have in our government to take effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, oddly enough, I mean, we're going to kick it over to you, Paul. I feel like your part's not going to be any less absurd than mine was.
I think that's true. Yes.
Right? So, the first one is the protecting the American people against invasion.
Yes. So highlights, give some highlights.
Yeah.
We'll
Give us the highlights.
Highlights, little lights.
So it says that the policy of the United States is to faithfully execute the immigration laws against all inadmissible and removable aliens. So I would think the policy of the United States is to enforce the law as it's written, which includes benefits as well as enforcement. But you see this bias in this order.
Yeah.
It also tells our special agents, the Homeland Security Investigations agents, who do all sorts of criminal matters to focus just on Title VIII. So that's going to lead to less public safety investigations and prosecutions, less trafficking investigations, less cyber porn investigations, because they're being told to focus on Title VIII matters.
Yeah. And Title VIII is?
Title VIII is the Immigration and Nationality Act. So it's the civil immigration law.
Yeah.
Okay.
So protecting the American people against
Invasion.
a very specific type of politicized invasion.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's not an invasion in any objective sense. And that perhaps will be one of the main reasons it's struck down. We've had illegal immigration, irregular migration for years. It's been worse. It's been better. This is not an invasion. And taking away due process rights, taking away Title VIII protections on the border, even though they're very minimal protections, is premised on this invasion. And I don't think courts are going to agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're going to hold you to that, Paul.
Yeah.
I have faith in our judiciary.
You do, man. That's another reason why we had to have you here.
Yeah,
man,
absolutely. Because otherwise it would just be like a negative Nancy podcast if it was just Robert and I.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, I mean, my level of faith in the judiciary has been eroded quite a bit.
But for hope, just recently, 5 Supreme Court justices required U.S. aid to disperse the money that it was legally obliged to disperse, and one of those justices was so-called conservative justice. So I think you'll see conservative judges. I think you'll even see Trump judges who are committed to the rule of law finding a lot of these things illegal.
Hope so. Fingers crossed. Right.
Right.
To all my Federalist judges out there, do your job, be responsible, and enforce and interpret statutes, and protect the division of the government. And the executive should not have unlimited power. It needs to be checked. We're a system of a government of laws. We have limited power. We have checks and balances, and I expect the courts to check.
Yeah, I think I will say, setting aside the flippant remarks that I both said and also believe, I do think that there's going to be a delayed effect in pushback from courts, from people. I mean, I feel that this administration is influenced quite a bit by public opinion, and public opinion sours quickly when people actually, get the horrible things they've been asking for. Right?
Yeah.
So, the next one, what's the next one? Guaranteeing...
I guess, should we talk about the registration of aliens?
Oh, I missed that one. I'm sorry.
So this is this has been like something I've been getting so many calls from current clients. I think that this has been a source of a lot of stress for a lot of people that are here in the U.S. of So Paul, can you explain what this duty of registration is? What do we know so far about this?
So it's setting up a system where if non-citizens aren't already registered, so for example, they're not in removal proceedings or they don't have pending applications, they're going to have to go online, create a CIS account, and register and share information. There's alleged penalties for failing to do so. The statute talks about a responsibility to register within the first 30 days. So query, if it's years later, and when that person came in, there wasn't any means to register, is that really a criminal violation?
Yeah, and I think it has to be knowingly. So a lot of people are, I think, I think a lot of people, there's just so much uncertainty, I think, amongst immigrants of who has to register, who doesn't have to register. There's a lot of confusion. And so I think there's a lot of people who are going to just fail to register, not because they don't want to, or they just don't know whether or not they have to.
Sorry. Quick question. How do they register?
It appears to be very tied to the way someone creates a USCIS account if they're not already registered.
So actually, what it said was that you register for a USCIS account and then they'll notify you through the USCIS account.
Okay.
Right? So there is no way to register, right? Like,
Yeah.
One of the craziest things about this is that it's terrifying. It's terrifying. It sounds horrible. It harkens back to the idea of like marking people, putting armbands on them, right? And so a lot of folks, much like Asma, have been calling. They're concerned. What do I do? How do I respond? Mm-hmm. And for people that want to immediately comply with this rule, right? There's no way to do it, right? It's an impossible mandate.
Yeah.
And for it to be such a fear-inducing issue or regulation, it's insane to me that they didn't have some instruction, some further guidelines, or at least set a date. Like, hey, on this date, we're going to release the instructions to do it.
Everything, everywhere, all at once.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hot dog fingers.
Hot dog fingers.
If you know, you know.
I don't know. Haven't seen the movie yet.
Yeah, hot dog fingers. So yeah, it's just weird.
It's
just
very
weird.
very strange film. Entertaining though. Okay. So let's talk about this next executive order. So the next one I believe that we have on the list is guaranteeing the state's protection against, again, invasion. So Paul, do you want to talk about what this executive order is about?
So again, it's premised on this idea of an invasion, and it's saying that non-citizens on the border don't have their limited rights to apply for asylum. It's leading to things like non-citizens being sent to Panama, non-citizens being sent to Venezuela. It asserts broad executive power, and it implies there's a broad executive power apart from Congress. Now, there's certainly some executive power, but I think this is where you're going to see courts checking the executive branch. What Supreme Court has said is where the president is exercising authority given to it by Congress, courts are going to be very deferential. But to the extent the executive says, this is all my own power, I can do what I want, courts are going to check that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's and I hope that they do, because it is very concerning having somebody being shipped off to somewhere like Guantanamo Bay. You think about just simple things like having access to counsel. It just makes it impossible to defend yourself, in immigration court proceedings.
Yeah.
So
also, one of with the ALA national committees, one of the things that they've heard is that people are being sent back to countries that aren't following, the guidelines and regulations that exist for asylum and refugees, and are immediately being sent back to their home country, so that refoulement isn't being protected.
Yes.
Like people who are granted withholding of removal, for instance, right? That's
exactly
okay.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly right.
So someone being granted withholding of removal, they then get removed to Mexico. And then Mexico's like, we're sending you right back to your country. And they're not honoring the withholding of removal.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
And that's very much what the third order, securing our borders, does. It talks about international cooperation and securing third countries under INA 208. There's probably know that a non-citizen cannot be given asylum if there is a third safe country. So there's going to be a creation of alleged third safe countries. But right now, Panama is not a third safe country. There's been litigation going on about what's happening there, and the administration is not saying that Panama is a third country.
Yeah.
So they're sending people to. The administration is not saying that Panama is a safe third country.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they don't care. I mean, it's very extra legal, right? It's I don't want to say illegal or but it's they're going to the line of what's lawful, and it's stepping over.
I would say, I'd say they're definitely stepping over the border of legality.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's an invasion.
Yeah, of a border. Someone should build a wall.
Yeah, someone should build a wall of legality. To address this. Build that wall.
And make Mexico
federal judges build that wall.
And make Mexico pay for it. The wall of Mexico.
Yes.
Yeah. Everything.
Another part of that securing our borders is the Attorney General and the U.S. attorneys are going to prioritize investigating and prosecuting human smuggling, human trafficking, child trafficking, sex trafficking. Hey, nothing, I have no problems with that.
Yeah.
But I think what you're going to see is, this relates to another executive order, they're going to designate the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, which, that sounds good, right? But then what about that person that paid the cartel to smuggle in his child? That person has now provided material support to a terrorist organization.
And so that's a bar to asylum.
Yeah, correct.
So,
that is what I think you're going to see trial attorneys, how they're going to be using.
Asserting that bar.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we see a lot of this too in the executive orders, Paul, where, and I agree with you. Absolutely. We want human smuggling, human trafficking, child trafficking, sex trafficking. We want, I think everybody wants a crackdown on that. But then at the same time, they're going to make it more difficult for people to avail things like T visas, where they were actual victims of trafficking. And so and for those of you that may not have heard, the way that they're making it more difficult is that they're exposing victims that report what would happen to the danger of being placed in removal proceedings. So
correct.
It's the actions that they've taken in other areas don't seem to line up with this goal of maximizing prosecutions against human smuggling, human trafficking, blah, blah, blah. So,
another thing they're going to do, I think under this order, they've already started to do it, is expanding expedited removal, which is pretty scary. So basically, if you came in under the Biden administration and you were paroled in or you were apprehended between the ports of entry, you're going to be subject to expedited removal if you don't have a pending affirmative asylum application. And probably if you're not in removal proceedings. We have seen some cases where the ICE attorneys have terminated 240 removal proceedings, and then ICE has arrested the people and put them in expedited removal.
So what you mean by 240?
So normal immigration court proceedings, and there's this. It came from the 1996 law, expedited removal. It's a summary procedure on the border for people that have just entered without ties, and that's why constitutionally it may be legitimate, because the non-citizens have very few ties. Hence, a summary procedure is appropriate. But what they're doing is they're going to be applying this expedited procedure to people that have been here a long time, who were paroled in or apprehended at or near the border, and
regardless of how long they've been here, so it's no longer hey, you've been here for over 2 years, you're not subject to expedited removal. It doesn't matter.
Not if you were paroled in, or if you were apprehended within 14 days of coming in and within 100 miles of the border. Those people will be subject to expedited removal. It sounds, I've spoken to a few reporters and like, wait a second, but these people have work authorization and they're paroled, and it sounds like status, but from an immigration standpoint, and we know it's really not. ICE can simply arrest the person and remove the person.
Yeah. And then when you factor in EOIR's growing backlog, which is happening at the same time as there's this purge of the same immigration judges you need to reduce the backlog, the incentive for EOIR to just go along with this to reduce their backlog is pretty high as well. So
that's true.
Yeah.
I've seen some talking to some of the NGOs, and we've got there's a nice boilerplate opposition that we can file when the government tries to dismiss. Now we may lose that, but it's going to happen. So expedited removal is very interesting. I think we can challenge its application if you have to be inadmissible under A7, which means at the time of admission. So we can argue, look, this Cuban person, he was paroled in. It was like, he through CBP-1 or through the Cuban, Haitian, Venezuelan, Nicaraguan program, he was sort of let into the country. And so he's really not, he had sort of a way in, and we can argue that doesn't apply. But that's not going to stop ICE. They're going to ignore us, and they're going to say, under our guidance, this person is subject to expedited removal.
Yeah.
So it may be, there's a national lawsuit challenging expedited removal. So hopefully courts will limit this expanded expedited removal.
Yeah. Well,
and it just goes to show, it's funny. I think the safest people right now are people who are already in removal proceedings, who are already have immigration court. And, I don't know if I've ever felt like that was the case before, but now it really is starting to feel like that's the case. Yeah.
I mean, to the degree that there even is a safety, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the mechanisms to remove people anywhere they are, and regardless of what proceedings they are, I mean, they're trying to build that into all of this. So I feel that the main defense, I wish I had Paul's faith that, it's the federal courts. I think it's just that they're breaking the same machinery that they need to remove, detain, etc. Mm-hmm. They're breaking it. Yeah. So, someone's in removal court right now, cases are being moved up, but I mean, 2 years from now, how long is it going to take to get somebody a hearing, So,
right. And one scary thing is the pressure that the administration is putting on and will put on the immigration judges. They're trying to take away their civil service protection. If you saw Stephen Miller at the CPAC conference, and he was just threatening federal employees, you need to do what President Trump tells you to do. So immigration judges are going to be intimidated to not stick their neck out and grant relief. Otherwise, the eye of Sauron may focus on them and remove them. And same with ICE. We're seeing a lot of stories about leadership of ERO being removed because the numbers and the detentions aren't what the Trump administration wants. So that's incentivizing ICE to not release anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, which is creating overcrowding detention centers.
You got some experience with that, right?
Yes. So I visited a detained client just last week, and I was just so curious because I get so many calls. I think we all do, whether or not you do detained work or not, of like, oh, so-and-so is at Prairie Land Detention Center, so-and-so is at this detention center. So my client is at Prairie Land Detention Center, and I was curious. I was asking him, how many people are currently detained right now? And he said it was crazy. He said that they're well over capacity. They're just sticking mattresses wherever they can find a space to stick a mattress. They don't have any room to eat anywhere. So they've just been sitting on their mattresses and eating on their mattresses. And so, I think it's just... I think the detention centers are well over capacity right now. So
maybe that gives us some solace when our clients report in for their check-ins. There'll be less detention space.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, at some point, right? Like you just think because of the laws of physics, they have to stop stuffing people into cells, right?
Yeah.
So.
And there'll be all sorts of lawsuits because, boy, when you have that many people, stuck together, I mean, that is just, whenever there's just like overcrowding like that, there's just all sorts of, stuff that spreads around in the detention centers. It's just, it creates kind of an unsanitary environment and
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, moving along.
Yes.
Designating cartels and other organizations as foreign terrorist organizations. And so we touched on this. Okay. All right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Protecting the United States from foreign terrorists and other national security and public safety threats. Hey, that sounds good. Right? I like being protected from terrorists. What's up with this one? Break this down for me.
So the deadline is coming up by March 20th. Authorities in the government are supposed to say which countries they think don't have proper vetting, and those countries may be subject to travel bans, and non-citizens from those countries will be prioritized for removal.
Travel ban. Travel ban
Sound
equals
familiar?
Muslim ban. How many countries that were previously on the Muslim bans do you guys think will coincidentally be on this list again?
Yeah. And we're going to see, I think, some added. It will, it's going to be all sorts of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And given the increased numbers of people that voted for this, exact administration, who are going to be affected by this, it should be pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. What do they call that? F around and
FOFA. Yes.
FOFA.
Yes. Fluff around and find out.
Oh,
Yes.
New term for me.
Yes,
Yep.
sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
This is a wholesome family show.
Yes.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it is exactly that. And some people actually do fulfill their campaign promises, and he is doing exactly what he said he was going to do when you voted for him. So
Yeah.
it's just, they thought the eye of Sauron just wouldn't be pointing at them. Nope. It's you too, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're the other as well. All right, so that brings us to protecting the meaning and value of American citizenship. Oh,
Wow.
I bet. Now, I haven't read this, but I bet it's a very specific type of meaning and value for a very specific type of American citizen.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I'm very happy that courts have been protecting the meaning and value of American citizenship by enjoining the executive order. The executive order says that if you don't have citizen parents, or you don't have at least a lawful permanent resident mother, then you're not a citizen. So courts have pushed back on that. I think you told me that it was a Reagan judge that enjoined it in the state of Washington.
Absolutely. And Paul, why don't you go ahead and get the cookie tin?
Here we
Because
go.
this is our hitter kit. So so was this?
Yeah, so the hitter kit, right? We just broadly, what happened with the citizenship, birthright citizenship? Is it a hit or is it kit? Go ahead. Crack it open.
Let's see.
Crack it open. Here you go. Lean into it.
Oh my gosh.
What? Yeah, we didn't have cookies, guys. Calm down.
We didn't have cookies, so we put a donut.
Calm down. It's fine. We can edit it in post. Don't worry about it. Yeah. So actually a good thing, right? It's actually a good thing. Surprisingly enough, we were shocked as well. And here's the thing. You'd think, okay, well, one judge, some liberal state, enjoying this, but I mean, what, like 4 or 5? There's been several judges that were like, come on, bruh. They didn't say that specifically, but pretty close to it, right? One judge says this was not a close case, right? So that is a judge has been like, nah, bruh.
I think the judge in the state of Washington was appointed by President Reagan. He was asking the government counsel, so did any lawyers work on this executive order?
Imagine being that attorney in there, just...
Oh, man.
I do feel bad for some assistant United States attorneys who have to go into court and represent the government on these matters.
I wonder what percentage of the new attorneys are like, hey, man, I've got something. This is great for a learning experience, right? They're like, that's how they pitch it. You just hand them a manila folder, with napkins, with just the scrawlings of a madman on it, and go get them, Tiger.
Go talk to that judge.
You've always wanted to try be first chair in a federal case, buddy. Here it goes. Yeah. I mean, the silver lining for this absurdity that's happening in court is that when a case is this far off of following what jurisprudence says, judges get real funny. You know,
Yeah.
they get real crafty and, you know, it always makes for good sound bites.
No, it's true. I think judges are going to be pushing back. It worries me a little bit when any administration, sort of left or right, pushes too far. It can lead to a counter reaction, which can be really negative. I look back at DACA. I think when DACA came out, people were okay with DACA. Conservatives might have grumbled a bit, but no one was opposed to it. But then President Obama greatly expanded it to DAPA, which would have been like 5 million undocumented people would have been eligible for this indefinite work authorization. And that led the state of Texas to sue, and that led to DAPA being enjoined. And unfortunately, it led to DACA being declared illegal. Of course, that's still pending Supreme Court review, but it highlights the cost of going one way too far because it leads to a counter reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and once again, I think extra legal is the idea, right, behind everything that they're doing, and there is a certain level of disdain for the decisions coming out of the courts. The fact that I keep seeing articles in the news that say, will the administration decide to follow what the courts say? What do you mean, will they? Like, that's kind of how this whole thing works, right? It's insane to me. And it's just like, just casually just being thrown around. Like, it's bizarre, man. It's absolutely bizarre.
It's unfortunate. Like, Justice Barrett, definitely a conservative justice, and she's been subject to a lot of hate from MAGA for being the fifth vote to basically tell the Trump administration, look, this money was appropriated, it was sort of already obligated, it needs to be spent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, kind of on a final note, something that wasn't in kind of the executive orders, but, and I think this really ties in our theme of everything, everywhere, all at once, even the immigration attorneys who don't touch kind of the courtroom stuff. If you're an immigration attorney that does affirmative filings with USCIS, well, they're making that so difficult too. Constantly changing the forms. We saw that this week with, I believe, the I-485, the Form N-400, the U-Visa cert forms, just changing them. And basically giving us no grace period of, okay, we will accept the old form until this date. And so, and the great thing I will say that kind of comes out of all of this kind of craziness is that, the immigration bar, a lot of us band together, we sue. And that's what has happened is that, there's now a pending lawsuit against USCIS, and it's unfair to us and to our clients for them to constantly be doing this. So
I think I want to get a bumper sticker or a T-shirt that says there is now a pending lawsuit. Because for all of these things, that's what's going to happen. That's what's coming. Right. It's just too big of a target not to hit in court.
Wasn't the date aren't the forms? Was it the forms effective April 1st? Maybe that was some sort of dark joke of the Trump leadership of that it would be April Fool's Day that they would be effective, but then they tell us that they have to be filed now.
This is highly unlikely coming from an administration that has the Doge Department of Government Efficiency, which is the Dogecoin and the Doge memes.
It's not very efficient.
And it's not very funny, So, I mean, I think when you have people making decisions that seem to be focused on just malice, right? Creating havoc and making things difficult, just really isn't out of the realm of possibility that, the April 1 thing is just a joke. So, geez. Yeah, we need an off-ramp other than that here, guys.
A positive note.
Positive notes are, I think, that, we are seeing a lot of pushback from courts, from, I don't know. I definitely think, like Robert said, it's getting to a point where, they just keep kind of throwing things into a broken system where it's just going to naturally take care of itself. They're going to run out of detention space. Hearing dates are going to be, they're already being set 4 years away in most cases in Dallas. And
I do think that it seems like the competency is inversely proportional to the malice in the actions being taken at this point, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, what highlights it better than saying, we want the immigration courts to, move all these cases and, move the removal, the individual hearing dates up. We want you guys to work harder, but also we're going to fire a bunch of judges just for silly, not even a political reason. Literally just they drew a line in the sand. Anybody that was hired by Biden, within the probationary period, just gone. The ACIJs, I understand that a bunch of them were fired, others were moved around.
BIA,
like a good number of the board members, they call them appellate judges now. And they were sorry, we're taking you off the board.
Yeah.
But you can be an attorney advisor. So they let them sort of be staff attorneys.
Yeah.
You're no longer in charge, but you can stand around and inhale smoke as we burn everything down, right? So, I do think that I don't want to say incompetence, because I think you have to have a goal in mind, to be able to measure competence, right? This is just, as I heard somebody say the other day, it takes a carpenter to build a barn, but any jackass can knock it down. And right now, that's what it feels like, sabotage. Like they're just trying to break everything that they can. So, but at some point, the same things that you're breaking are the things that you need to continue to break stuff. So, just watch the show, I guess. In the meantime, my advice to my clients, and colleagues and myself in the morning in the mirror when the tears dry, the best thing that we can do right now as advocates, as immigrants, is just to be ready to respond, right? You cannot predict what's coming next week, the next EO and the next memo. So instead, you take care of yourself, take care of the people around you, stay as informed as you can, and keep your powder dry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Paul, thank you so much for joining us once again. You guys can check us out we're on YouTube, Spotify.
We're on iTunes now.
We're on iTunes now.
Figured it out. Yep.
Awesome. So yes, please like, share, follow, all that good stuff.
And again, shout out to Phenomenon Studio for the production on this.
Yes.
You guys look them up if you need video work. Please take care of yourself.